Hello, I'm Samantha Anderson, Director of Communications for Newton Public Schools, and I'm here virtually with Dr. Hamm. And we're here to answer any questions you might have. Now, we may just have to say, we're working on an answer. We'll get back to you soon, but we just want to be able to have a discussion where you can ask what questions you have. So first of all, Dr. Hamm, can you explain why you are here with us virtually?
Well, like many people, over spring break, we had a plan, and we were traveling in California, and as recommended by the KDHE, I am self-quarantining for the next 14 days due to my travel. We have at least a couple of other staff members that I'm aware of that also traveled out of state over spring break, and they will be doing likewise. So for the next 14 days, I will be working from my office at home.
All right. We're just going to give ourselves a couple minutes. People are finding our live feed, so I'm just making sure everybody gets a chance. It looks like we have about 66 people already. So as I said, just make sure you ask any questions and leave them in the comment section. But before we get to questions, Dr. Hamm, can you just give us a update of what the governor announced and maybe what that means for our district?
Well, the governor announced yesterday a closure of all K-12 schools in the state of Kansas, both public and private, if you are accredited. So it was certainly a big announcement and one that carries a lot of ramifications and things that we will need to work through as far as how do we continue education with our schools being closed.
All right. And one question I've been seeing a lot and that we'll have to update people on, there is some situations where students may have items at school, backpacks. High schoolers have stuff in their lockers, so do some of the other grades. What's the plan for that right now?
Right now we are working on a plan to follow the CDC guidelines and be able to get people in to pick up their personal items. And that includes staff members as well as parents and their children's items. So we will be announcing that a little bit later. It will be a monitored pickup, and so we will have to send out, this is your time to come in to get your things, and limit the number of people in at any one time. So we will be putting together those plans. We've already started and getting that information out to parents, but it probably will not happen before next week.
All right. Well, does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? We had Stephanie McCorkle ask if we could turn the weird music off. We don't have any music on our end. I don't, maybe it's in your background, unless other people are hearing music. But do we have any other questions about the actual school district and things that we're doing? If not, I can continue asking questions that people have been asking me. Can you just talk a little bit about the group or what you know about the group of teachers from across the state that have been working on a plan for us?
There's a group of somewhere between 25 and 40, I'm not exactly sure of the exact number, of educators in the state of Kansas that are working to develop a plan for education to continue with our buildings closed. So we are supposed to hear more about that later today, and we will then get that information out. Next week, our teachers locally will begin looking at those recommendations and determining what they can do. We want to make sure that our students, our seniors in particular, have the credits that they need, our high school students. And so we'll be looking at what do we need to do to provide them with opportunities to finish out this school year. So we don't know what that's going to look like yet. We don't know what the recommendations are going to be. We can make some assumptions that it's going to be a lot of technology-based instruction. And so we'll be looking at also which families in our community have access, which families do not have access to the internet, and then how can we best meet those needs. So there's a lot more questions than we have answers for right now, but we're going to be working very fast to get those answered so that parents have a better idea of what to expect for their child.
Okay, we had a lot of questions just roll in, so we're just going to get to them in the order that they came. One person asked, will students that paid sports fees get their money back since sports are canceled?
Yes, we will be working on getting those refunds out to our families. I cannot say when that might occur, but as soon as possible, we will get those refunds out.
Okay, here's a question. I'm going to kind of summarize it because it's a bunch of questions in one. What will happen with seniors and their events like senior night and prom? Can you let us know that?
Well, at this time, I would have to say that everything is canceled. We hesitate to make any formal decision until we know exactly how long this will be. But last night, the governor said through the end of the school year, which would include all of our activities such as prom, graduation, 8th grade promotion, senior night, all of those kinds of activities that would normally gather more than 50 people together at one time. So it's unprecedented historically, just unprecedented that we would be in this position.
All right, and the same person also asked about the unfinished projects in the fine arts department, things like murals. And this particular person never finished her title, and she graduates this year. So, and do you have any information for them?
One of the things that I talked about with some other superintendents from other districts this morning was how we might work with very small numbers of students, like maybe 2 or 3 at a time, to finish up some projects such as industrial arts projects or art projects, those kinds of things that would require them to be in the school working with a teacher. So again, our teachers haven't met yet to begin having those discussions. We have some concerns about the health and how do we guarantee the health, or at least do the best we can to ensure the health of our employees as well as our students. So some people are doing things like taking temperatures before people are allowed to work together, those kinds of things. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but we are considering how we might be able to have students finish up projects.
Okay, another question. It's a pretty broad one. How are middle schoolers going to get lessons?
Well, again, we have the personalized platform that we've been using through Summit Learning, and we will continue that. There's a lot of things that they'll be able to do then through that platform. And then, again, we haven't started our planning yet with teachers, but then a thought would be that teachers would be online during certain hours and be able to work with kids virtually and help them if they're having difficulties in their lessons. So we don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but fortunately we have a lot of technology already available in our district, and so we will be looking at how we can maximize its use and provide an education for our students.
All right, we have switched internet, so hopefully this works better. I have all the questions left on the previous feed pulled up on my phone, so I'll be reading them off of there and then also going to the ones on this new feed. Will someone let me know if they can hear and see us all right before we get started? Just leave a comment. I see some people are watching. Can you just let us know if you can hear or see us? We'll give it a couple of minutes. Again, Dr. Hamm, can you give a brief explanation expectation on this, or explanation on this feed, why we're doing this digitally.
We're doing this digitally because I traveled over spring break to a location recommended for self-quarantine if you have spent time in there. So I was in California visiting some friends, and when I left, the situation was different, and by the time we got ready to come home, it required me to self-quarantine for 14 days. So I will be working from my home office for the next couple of weeks.
Okay, awesome. Thank you to everybody who said they can hear us, and thank you to the people on the last feed that let us know that you were having difficulties. We really appreciate it. This is unprecedented, so we're trying to get the information out to you as many ways as possible. So we will get to the questions on this feed, but let's go back to the ones asked before. What are your plans for online learning?
We don't have specific plans at this time. We know that we can utilize that platform. We'll be discussing that over the next 7 days, and we'll have a plan in place by March 30th. We know we have lots of resources available to us, both from our textbook companies that we currently work with and other software packages that the district already utilizes in the school setting. So we'll just be utilizing as many of those things as we can.
All right, and then another question. What will we be doing about Special Education Services IEP Deadlines Act?
That's a very good question, and we will be working through that. Right now, we don't have guidance from the federal government or the state government regarding how this very unprecedented, I don't have another word to use, action in our state impacts federal law. So we will be determining how we can best address special education needs moving forward. So we just don't know.
All right. What about online content? They want to know if it's being developed currently.
Online content for grades 5 through 8 is already developed. High school has the lost the term, learning management system for called Canvas, and many of the teachers already utilize that, so we will be utilizing that more. That will allow students to get content in that way. We also have a number of textbook resources that already have an online component. Students may or may not have been using those already, but we will have those available for parents to use.
All right. What about, is March 30th the target date for beginning online learning?
Correct. March 30 would be the target date. However, that could change depending on the teacher and depending on the content to a little bit later that week. I just don't know.
Then will graduation be postponed, or is it, are we going to have to figure out a...
At this time, if you ask me that question today, we have to say that it's canceled. The governor clearly closed the schools through the end of this school year. So that would mean that we would not have activities such as graduation during this school year.
If classes go to small numbers, 9 or less, what if some parents don't want to expose their kids to that?
Right, that is an absolute concern, and we understand that. So we would be looking at different options. We already, just this morning, had a conversation with Harvey County Health Department to get some clarification on the executive order that came out. There will be more guidance that comes out over the next few days as people begin to ask questions about what is this going to look like and how will we operate. So.
And is there a deadline for the plan to be developed? Right now it's March 30th.
Correct.
Yeah.
Teachers are all on spring break this week, so they're not available to do this work until Monday. And so we will begin that work with teachers on Monday.
We've answered spring sports fees, but graduation fees, will they be refunded to families?
I don't know. That is something I will have to check into.
Okay. And how will middle school and elementary schools complete schoolwork without access to computers?
Again, a question that we are dealing with now. We are fortunate in that we are a one-to-one district. In other words, we have a computer for every student in the district. So while our elementary students in particular don't currently take their computers home, we are looking at what we might be able to do there.
Will we be able to drop off school library books?
Yes, we will keep you posted as to a date and time to do that.
I don't know if we know the answer to this one, but it's a good question. Are broadband providers really making free access available to families that might not have it?
That is our understanding, and we are currently in conversation with local vendor to be able to address that question. I just don't have the answer right now.
And then what is the plan for seniors and probably area-wide students taking HCCC classes on site at the high school? Will that directive come from the high school or Hutchinson Community College?
We will be working with Hutchinson to determine that. These are concurrent classes, so we have some certain competencies that we have to address. But there, like I said earlier, looking at what can we do for our industrial arts classes in particular, so machining, welding, those kinds of things. We will be looking at providing that to our students in very small numbers, possibly. We just don't know yet.
All right. Now we are going to switch to our current questions. So let me scroll back to the top. We've answered that one. How would we get the technology to students if we needed to?
If we need to, it'll be a similar thing to coming in and picking up your items from the school. So we'll have a pickup time. We'll control the numbers of people that are coming at any one time. We might even be delivering. So, I mean, there's all kinds of options that we will consider and how we will do that.
One commenter expressed her concern. So she thinks small group learning is a great idea. Her concern is parents who work and won't be able to get their children to and from student sessions throughout the day, especially parents with multiple children in different buildings. Have we thought about that? Are we trying to work through that?
Yes, that will be a consideration that we have to address. So an example of a way to possibly work around that will be to provide pickup and delivery services. We just don't know yet.
And then one parent said that their fifth grader uses Summit Learning. Will they be able to continue work as planned?
Yes.
Okay. And someone asked, what's the plan for elementary school age? Can parents have the choice to hold their child back if they want?
Well, the research is really clear as to retention and the effects of retention on students. So holding kids back may not be the best answer. Maybe we need to look at an extended year for some students that maybe are struggling. So that will be a question I'm sure that will come up with our educators as we begin to work through these multiple things next week.
This may be a better question for Justin's, but just in case we have been in contact with them, do you know if they're going to give senior parents a refund for caps and gowns and such?
I do not know the answer to that, but certainly I will find an answer and get back with people.
All right. And we've kind of touched on this, but it's coming up a lot, so let's just reiterate. What about the children who receive IEP and extra help?
Right. The IEP services, again, depending on the child, will look different than they currently look. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but our special education staff will be addressing those needs with guidance from the federal and state government regarding our expectations and what we have to, what we need to provide for our students. So we will be looking at that, and parents can look for more information to come out soon.
Aren't all buildings physically closed regardless of numbers?
Well, again, that is something that we're looking into. The executive order seems to say something different than what we understood. So we are going to finalize that information, and that certainly will impact what we do moving forward as far as working with students.
And then I think we've touched on this. If people have instruments still at the school, we are working on a schedule to get students to their items and their instruments and things, right?
Correct. Yes.
Will I still be able to have my 504 plan meeting with the school next week?
My guess is it will be happening virtually rather than in person, but I don't know the answer to that yet. So I will get with the building principals later today, and so that will be one thing that we will talk about.
Okay.
Thank you for that question.
Will we mail out diplomas?
Yes, students will still be issued diplomas. I don't know whether they'll be mailed out or if we'll try to make some way to personally deliver them or something, because again, I think it's a pretty large accomplishment to have graduated from high school, and it seems a little sad just to receive your diploma in the mail. So we'll look at those options, but yes, students will still receive a diploma.
If the House bill voted on yesterday for giving seat hours to students as signed by the governor, how will that affect the plans? Do we know that yet?
We do not know that yet. What has happened is that the schools are all required to be in session either a number of days or a number of hours, and our district has elected to be in for a number of hours. So our instructional time is 1,116 hours of instruction per school year. So what the action yesterday does is waive that requirement. So the amount of time that we have been in school will be counted plus whatever time is waived to equal the time required, is our understanding at this time. So we'll see how that works moving forward. But some of the things that we normally have done requiring seat time will not be required. In other words, students won't have to physically be at school in order for education to continue.
The state assessments or DLM, will the requirements be the same, or are there any changes for either?
No, there will be changes. I don't know specifically what those are yet, but what I can tell you is that state assessments cannot be given in an online in-home environment. So if they're outside of the school setting, they will not be taking state assessments. So at this time, we don't believe that the state assessments will move forward, but we will have more information on that from KSDE.
All right. Here's another question about Summit Learning, just a little bit more specific. Will they start taking tests at home, and do we know when?
Again, that's a great question, which I don't have a specific answer for. But my assumption would be yes, we will need to change the way that we have done those things, but that's my assumption. The teachers, in conjunction with instructional services, will be working on what the specific guidelines are for students to take those assessments, but likely they will be taking them at home.
Will students with IEPs be allowed paras or other assistance per their accommodations?
The answer to that would be yes, but I don't know what that will look like yet. So again, an example might be that a paraeducator would be online with a student much the way we are online right now, and working with a student to provide instruction. There are ways to share screens and be able to show students examples, those kinds of things in an online setting. So we'll be looking at that. But yes, we will have to do something to make sure that we're addressing all the needs of students as much as we can.
And then SMD students, will they receive home-based education?
Again, those questions have not been answered yet, but we are and will be working on those this week and next week.
And then what about refunds for the school lunches that have already been paid?
Yes, those will work much like sports fees and how we refund money at the end of the school year typically. So we'll be working on that.
And then I think we kind of touched on it, but just to reiterate, the students taking classes through HCCC, how will those continue?
Again, most of the universities in the state of Kansas have gone to online learning. I have not been in conversation with HCC, but we will be in developing a plan for how we can make sure our students get the college credit. So.
And is that the same with CNA classes as well?
Again, that's a good question. I don't have the answer to. So I will write that down and find out from HCC.
And then kindergarten roundup, what are we doing with that?
Well, I think what we're going to end up doing with that is going to be having an online opportunity for our kindergarten parents. Not ideal, but we have not discussed that yet and come up with a plan. So stay tuned.
And then what about seniors who still need help with college transition? Is our goal to try to do that online?
Yes. I believe that counselors will be able to work virtually with students to address those types of issues.
And the person who missed the sports fee, that is planning on being refunded.
Yes.
Oh, this is a nice question. Is there a need for parent volunteers or donations?
Quite possibly. I don't know that yet. As we finish developing our plan, we'll have a better idea of what our needs are. But I think certainly needs for possibly reading with students. I think there are a variety of things that could be helped and supported by parent volunteers. So I appreciate the offer.
And then could NHS have graduation in June? Is that even a possibility?
It is a possibility. I think it depends a lot on what we see over the next several weeks about this virus and how it continues to develop in our state. The information that I have would indicate that we may be several weeks yet before it becomes before we reach the peak of the spread in our state. So if that's the case, then we're roughly 8 weeks till what would have been the end of the school year. So that could be up to 10 weeks out. So it's a possibility. I just can't say one way or the other for sure.
Going forward, what will the roles of support staff, such as regular aides, be?
Support staff, we don't know exactly what their role is going to be yet, but we know that we are going to continue to utilize our staff. And like I said, it could be checking in with kids online, reading with them online, helping helping them with a lesson. There are a multitude of things that we may be asking. It could even be delivering lunches. It could, I mean, there are just a lot of things that I think we're going to need that we haven't defined yet.
And then did I hear you say that each student will get a laptop? We're one-to-one, so they do. And then do you think we'll get them picked up before March 30th?
Again, that's one of the questions that we'll be talking about later today with a group of people. So I don't have a definitive answer for that, but it will be within the next 2 weeks. We'll have that information. I would say we'll be able to move much faster with 5th and 6th grade because they already have their computers assigned to them. So that may be a much quicker turnaround.
This is a good question. How far along is the district on meal plans, and what timeline do you have for decisions there?
We have been working on that for several days, actually. So we plan to start serving meals the 23rd, which would be Monday, and we will have a plan for how we're going to deliver those and those kinds of things shortly, and that will be announced.
Will they have the graphic arts and engineering students be able to bring their laptops home? There's special software, so I'm guessing that's the plan, right?
That I do not know because, again, there are more students in those classes than we have computers for, because those computers are, as they said, they have specialized software on them. So it might be that some students come in and work in a smaller setting. I don't have the answer to that.
What if you don't have internet at home?
Again, we are working on that. We have at least one vendor that has reached out and is willing to provide internet service for families during this time. So we'll have more details on that coming out.
And then what if you don't have a computer with a camera? We should be able to address that, right?
Yes, but we have Chromebooks, and all of the Chromebooks have video access, camera capabilities, as far as I'm aware. So if a student is using a district-owned computer, they'll have access.
And we've touched on this about getting their personal things out of their lockers. We're working on a plan currently for that. So we have discussed that. Oh, any plans for students who have signed up to take AP tests for college credit?
Again, a great question that I don't have a specific answer to. Our AP teachers will work on that next week. We'll have to work with the college board to make sure that we can do that. And again, it might mean that students come in and work to do their test in the building for a short period of time on a given day. I just don't have the answer to that.
And then, again, we are one-to-one with computers, so if you don't have a computer at all, we're working on a way to get that to you. If someone is taking alternative classes, the person says they understand forgiveness of time and hours. Any ideas on helping these students get their needed credits?
Right, we'll be working on that in the next week, and we'll have an answer for students and parents very soon.
All right. I teach an online HCCC class. The kids only present their speeches to me. There are less than 10 in the class, so will we be able to finish that this semester? Is that a wait and see kind of thing?
That is, my guess would be that there will be ways that we can accommodate that.
Thank you to all the people who are updating people on questions we've had before. I'm going through those right now. We appreciate it. Again, a lot of parents offering their help, which we really appreciate. That's awesome. Okay. If we do have small numbers of students at the school, what about staff who are in the high risk categories, compromised immune system, elderly, etc.?
Right. All of those things will have to be considered. And so for some staff members, it might be totally online. And they'll be working with students in the same way that you and I, Sam, are having this conversation today.
And when we get photos, will we get the photos we paid for? And will I get a paid book project for my kindergartner?
I would think that anything that has been done will be delivered. So it's if pictures were taken and paid for, then we will take delivery of those and make sure that parents get them.
How do you foresee handling online learning with early ed students who are not very independent, working online, and have a short attention span and possibly no adult available?
Right. We totally understand that age group, and so we'll be working with that. And again, it may look very different depending on the guidance that we get. So an example might be, and I'm not saying this is what would happen, but an example might be something like parents as teachers. We have teachers that go into homes and work with students and families, and so it might be something like that. Again, our focus really has to include not only how do we address the academic needs of our students, but also keeping our students and our staff members safe. So we don't have a plan yet for exactly what that will look like, but we understand the needs of students that are very young and how well they can stay engaged and what the purpose for the education will be in that setting. So our experts, our early childhood folks, will be working on that next week and seeing what kind of a plan that they come up with. I know that our folks at Cooper are very dedicated to their students and want to provide. Excuse me. It is not coronavirus. It is only a cold. No fever, anything like that. So sorry for the cough. But our folks at Cooper are very attuned to what the needs of early childhood students are, and they will work very hard at coming up with a plan that will work for kids.
How will elective courses like art and cooking be handled?
Again, a great question for which I don't have an answer for you today. The teachers in those areas will look at what can they do realistically and how that might look. It's a very different way of instruction than anything we've done before. So.
How are substitute teachers going to be utilized, and will they be compensated like teachers and paras?
Again, a great question. I think we're going to need to utilize staff members in a variety of ways. So substitute teachers could be utilized again to provide instruction to students in small groups and or online. So we'll be looking at what all of our assets are. Our staff and other things, and figuring out how to best utilize them to meet the needs of students.
What about paras and computers?
Again, great question. That's one of the logistic things that we have to work out yet, and we will be addressing that.
You're getting questions faster than I can keep up. We are going to have laptops available for K-12. Do we know when we'll receive refunds for sports fees?
No, No, I don't have a timeline for that.
What about seniors in programs like welding or where they can get a certification? Are we working with HCCC or what's the plan for that?
Yes, we will be working with HCC for that and determining how we're going to be able to do that and what that's going to look like.
Rural internet may be a problem. Have we reached out to any of those providers?
I don't know. I will check on that. We have a meeting today, and that's one of the logistics things that we'll be talking about.
Someone suggested online prom. I mean, we can look at all options, I guess.
Yeah.
For student athletes who are in their second year of a given sport, will they be eligible to letter even though their season was ended?
Again, a good question, and we'll be working with our coaches and our AD on that.
Are paras compensated like teachers?
All of our classified staff would follow the same pay scale and wage scale that they're currently on.
What about families with, broken laptops, broken Chromebooks? Have we thought about that?
Again, good question. I don't have an answer to, so we'll work through that.
And then Opportunity Academy, will we still be able to use their program?
Yes, we're looking at that right now. Our biggest challenge there is limiting the number of students and also social distancing. So we are considering our options there.
Yearbooks, have we thought about that yet?
I can truthfully say no. That has not reached the top of my list, but I'm sure that Robin Montano and high school students are thinking about that. Yes. So I am sure that we will have an answer.
Yes, Robin's always thinking about everything. She's very on top of it. How and where would seniors turn in applications for scholarships?
I think that you can look for information from our counselors to come out sometime either late next week or the first of the week of the 30th. They'll have to work to get out a plan for what that's going to look like.
Will applications still be sent out for Cooper Early Education Center next year?
Yes, we will move forward with early enrollment as we always do, and so those things will move forward as if we were in school.
Someone wanted a little clarification. Is March 30th the date students will return to classes online, or the date we'll have a plan?
No, we hope to have our plan developed sometime next week. We're shooting for March 30th as being the date that we'll begin rolling things out. Now, does that mean that we'll have all of the details worked out yet? No, probably not. And there will probably be things that will change even after that date. But once teachers are back next week, we will have them get to work on what that's going to look like, what's a possible schedule that they'll work with their students, all of those kinds of things. So,
do we anticipate still having scheduled required meetings, but virtually with parents, things like IEP meetings, 504s, etc.?
Yes, and it is possible that depending on the size of the group, that they would go ahead and be able to meet face-to-face. But yes, we will be looking at virtual responses whenever possible.
And are we considering having K-1 teachers put together learning packets rather than online instruction?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
And we are considering some ideas that would take kids offline as well. Is that right? Like, for instance, the packets.
Correct, yes. And we don't anticipate that students would be sitting in front of a computer for 6 hours a day either. It will not look like your typical school day. So we will use a combination of computer instruction and also checking in with students. That might happen by phone rather than on the computer. We will also look at, good old-fashioned books, reading of text, and those kinds of things. So there will be a variety of things that will be considered and be utilized with students. Technology is just one of them.
All right. If a family has access to a home computer, will a laptop still needed to be issued from the school, or can they use their own computer?
My assumption would be that they could use their own computer and would not need to have a district-issued computer. We will be asking parents for that information, and that would also free up some resources to be able to utilize with our paraeducators and our instructional aides that don't currently have a computer assigned to them.
Okay, Crystal, we are thinking about kindergarten roundup. It may be digitally. She did also ask a question. What about Cooper students as far as preschool graduation goes?
Excuse me. Well, graduation for preschool would be similar to graduation from high school. We will not be able to do that if the closure order stays in effect, and we don't have reason to believe that it will not. So,
is there a plan for job shadows scheduled for the high school students currently?
Again, this would be a total assumption on my part, but I would say that if the job shadows are arranged and students can still do them, then yes, they would still do them, because that doesn't require them to be at school.
What about IEP process that was supposed to start after spring break for the next year?
Again, I think the best response that I could give at this point is that with special education, we will be working with state and possibly federal guidance to address special education needs. And we don't know what that's going to look like yet.
What about our plan for Cooper kids? Will they be online as well? Or are we working on that?
We're working on that. Again, at Cooper, they do not have a computer. Students utilize an iPad. I don't know what that is going to look like, but my thoughts on that would be that we need to do what's developmentally appropriate, and it really isn't developmentally appropriate for young students to spend an expanded amount of time on the technology. So we want to make sure that we're doing what's developmentally appropriate for our students. And again, I can't say enough about the staff at Cooper. They are excellent. They understand preschool age children and younger, and they will develop a plan that will work best for their age students.
Someone asked if we'd continue these live streams throughout the situation. I don't see a reason not to.
Yes, I think it's a great idea to be able to do this. Again, we want to provide as much information as we can. We know that people have a lot of questions, and there right now don't seem to be a lot of real specific answers other than, yes, I can tell you we are going to refund your dollars. So that's something that as our plans develop and we have more specific information to give, I think it's a good idea for us to continue.
If we are needing an official transcript for scholarship applications, what would be the best way to get this, and who would you suggest they contact?
Right now, if they could just hold on for about a week, we will have our counselors back at work on Monday, and they will come up with a plan for what that's going to look like and work with the high high school counselors and registrar to get that information out as students need it.
And is the National Honor Society ceremony canceled? I'm guessing so for now.
Yes.
And then we're looking into welding and machining. We've covered that. And then someone is asking about a Q&A page. I was actually just thinking about that. So we will work on that. And just to let you know, this video, as well as the video where we had some technical difficulties, they will both be on our website. I'll edit them together into one stream. That way it's a little easier to follow. We do want to make sure we caption it, so that may take a little time, but we will work on getting a link on our website. So we have a lot of comments and people helping each other out, which is great. I don't know if we would know the answer to this, but are private schools required to follow these guidelines as well?
Yes, if they are accredited in the state of Kansas, they are required to follow the governor's orders.
And we're working on a plan for library books. Someone asked that question again. What about convalidation for international students? Do you know that?
I do not know anything about that. So that will be a great question to ask the high school next week.
Someone suggested you follow 32 more people on Twitter. That way it's 373. I mean, you can always find new followers. And we've kind of touched on it, but it's coming up a lot. With the child with an IEP, or really any child, how are we expected to navigate online when the parent has to work and they can't be at home with them the whole time?
Again, that is something that we are very concerned about. I don't have an answer for that today.
Okay. Can we email our counselors with instructions on how to access Naviance? Is that a possibility?
Yes.
Some people. All right. Let me see if there's any other questions we might have missed. We had a lot come very quickly. I'm going to check on my phone because I know some people messaged us some questions. How would physical education classes look? Will they have to take it again next year?
Good question. I don't have an answer. So it'll be something that we'll talk about and let parents and students know.
Just make sure we didn't miss anything. And if we did miss any, we will write them down and respond. We've had quite a few questions. Got all those. We had a bunch pop up at once, so I'm just making sure. Is there any consideration to postponing school a certain amount of weeks and then continuing into the summer? With the governor's announcement last night, I'm guessing that's a no. Is that right?
Correct.
And we will be sending out emails once things have been decided. Someone asked about paras and computers, if they need them. Do we know anything about that?
I do not have an answer to that yet, but that will be one of the things that we'll be working on logistically.
Could teachers and paras be scheduled to do home visits to work with students? and we covered that, kind of like parents as teachers. Um,
While Sam is scanning through those questions, I just want to say that, again, these are unprecedented times. We don't know what exactly all of the answers are going to be, but we have some amazing educators in our district that will work very hard at providing learning opportunities for students moving forward. And we will continue to work to address this in the best way possible.
and again, someone asked if a transcript or video of the live feed will be posted to rewatch later. Absolutely. It'll be on Facebook, and as I said earlier, I'm going to caption them, and I'm going to make the 2 different sessions into one video. That way it's easy for you all to watch, and captioning does take a little bit of time, so a little patience would be appreciated, but we will do that and make sure you have a chance to watch it again. And then someone asked if we could recap any key decisions, I think, made by the governor last night, just for those who may not know. That might be a good thing to do.
Well, again, the governor's executive order closes schools down for the remainder of the school year, and that really is the biggest part of all of that. It is unprecedented in our state, and we will be working very hard over the next week to figure out how we're going to provide instruction for kids to keep them from losing too much ground and making sure our seniors graduate, those kinds of things. So again, as Sam said about patience, about the captioning, this was an announcement that we only had as much time as you have had to adjust to. And so as we begin this process of figuring out the answers to how we're going to do this, we're going to need a little bit of time to get that done.
All right, I believe we've caught most of the questions. If we haven't, we will work on getting the answers and respond in the comments, and I can even send you a direct message to your answer to make sure you don't miss it. I'd be happy to do that. Are there any other questions before we go? Oh, this is a good one. Will this, and we'll give you like 20 more seconds to ask other questions. Will this affect the next school year length at all?
No. What we believe will happen is that we will, as a nation, have made it through this current crisis, and we will begin school as planned in August. The calendar has already been approved. At this point, there was no need to extend it. We would meet the required number of hours as set forth in current statute. So I don't anticipate any changes in the school calendar for next year.
And then again, for those who don't have Chromebooks, we are 1-to-1, so we're working on getting those to those people, at least through K through 12. So we did get a couple more. Someone asked, why not just extend the next school year? And
you mean make the next school year longer?
Yeah.
I don't know if that was a consideration at the state level in looking at the possibilities. There are all kinds of ramifications of that, including teacher contracts and a variety of other things. So that is a question that I can certainly ask the state commissioner today when we meet.
Okay. Again, thank you everyone who tuned in. Thank you to all of our amazing staff who helped us answer questions through the comments. And I know it's going to be a different time, but our staff is great, and I think that they'll do their best to make this as normal as possible. Do you have anything else to say, Dr. Hamm, before we go?
I don't. I appreciate everyone's efforts, and as we all work together, we'll figure out how to make this the best possible situation for our kids and our community. So thank you to everyone for all that you're doing to support your own children and to support others in the community.
Yep, and Scott, we are working on a plan. You added an exclamation point, so it seemed very urgent. So we are working on a plan for items in that are in the school districts that belong to the students. Well, and Liz, we have explained the IEPs. We'll be posting this online. We're developing a plan for that as well. I can give you a longer answer. Oh, we're getting more questions. I can message you. Just shoot me shoot info@usd373.org an email. Dr. Hamm, do you have time for a couple more questions? Or
I do, but I have another meeting scheduled, another virtual meeting. So,
how much more time do you think we have?
Well, let's just do 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. Well, thank you all for all your questions, and thank you, Dr. Hamm. I know this is a busy time for you, so carving out an hour of your time, I know I really appreciate it, and everybody really appreciates it.
This is important, though. It is extremely important. So right now, there's very little that would be more important than trying to address the questions of staff and students and parents.
So just because a bunch of people are asking again, can you re-explain the IEP situation?
Again, we have not yet received guidance from the state and or federal regulatory agencies for how this is going to affect special education. It is a federal law. We have to provide it. We don't know what that will look like yet. So as we go through the next 7 days or so, we'll be working on developing what that will look like. Our special education teachers will be very involved in determining what that looks like. So I wish I had a more specific answer than that, but hopefully parents will give us a little bit of time to get all that worked out.
Yeah, it's been less than 24 hours since we learned that this was happening. We had plans in place, but we just have to modify them and get them ready for this situation. And then we are working on a plan for students without internet. And we are Cox. Some people are asking about Cox Channel 7 to help with learning. Cox Channel 7 was ended, correct?
Right.
So unfortunately, that's not an option. So again, it seems like the questions have stopped again. So if anybody else has any other questions, we'll give you 30 seconds or so. We'll just give you a chance. We want to make sure we have them all. That does mean some awkward pauses, but that's okay as long as we can get your questions answered. All right. If you have any more questions, email them. You can do info@usd373.org. That's great. You can message us on Facebook. We appreciate you tuning in and taking time to learn more. And we will continue, communicating and doing different live streams throughout the next few months. So thank you so much, and have a great day. Thank you, Dr. Hamm.
Thank you, Sam.